Hello everyone, welcome to the video about how I like to do data meetings. So here is kind of an overview that I typed up. You can take a screenshot of this if you need a step-by-step sort of plan. There are things that I do before the meeting. So before the meeting, I make sure I have a copy of the TEKS or whatever standards you happen to be using. I print a copy of the test. Usually our tests are on the computer, so I do have to print it. I make sure that I have the following percents recorded, and I do record them on the front page of the test. So it's going to be my district percents, campus percents, and teacher percents of approaches, meets, and masters. If you're a coach, you'll probably want the percentages for each of your teachers on the test. If you're a teacher, you might just want your percent. The idea is that as we move from district to campus to teacher, that the percent actually gets higher every single time. So we want the district percent to be less than the campus percent and the campus percent to be less than the teacher percent. That would be ideal. If you're a really great high scoring teacher, that would be awesome. For each question, you want to record the percent correct for that question, and I'll write that on my copy of the test. If it's multiple choice, I will also record the percent for each answer choice. If it's free response, I will record the most popular wrong answer. My goal is to have a 75% correct on a multiple choice and 50% correct on a free response question. Remember, any difference less than 5% might not be significant. It might be, it might not be. It really is going to depend on class sizes and how many students you have taking that test. Once I'm at the meeting, there are things that I look for. I look at each question individually. You always want to take time to celebrate your wins. And then I do some strategizing to correct misconceptions. These are all the questions I might ask myself while strategizing to correct misconceptions. There might be other questions that aren't listed here, but whatever I do, I definitely want to make notes so that next year's lesson is taught even better. So let's look at an example test, and I'll kind of walk you through that. So let me turn the iPad the other way. If I was a teacher, I might start out with this information here at the top. If I was a coach, I might have more than one teacher's information here at the top. So this would be an example of that. And I would compare all these numbers. Remember, ideally, I want it to get higher as I go this direction. So that would be really great. So example, teacher 1, not bad here, but we don't have a lot of kids getting masters. So that teacher needs to be focusing on bringing those kids over to mastery, to really pushing some of their meets kids to masters. Teacher 2 probably needs to focus on getting some more kids maybe over to the meets area because some of those kids are probably going to move this way. So ideally in your approaches meets masters, in the ideal world, ideal approaches meets masters is going to be your 30, 60, 90 triangle. So you want approaches to be 90%, you want meets to be 60%, and you want masters to be 30%. That's the ideal world. If you were a perfect teacher, hopefully those would be your percents. I don't know any perfect teachers. You let me know if you found one. So I'm going to go through each of my questions and I'm going to look at them. Let's see, I might start with maybe example 2. So this is a free response question. And I'm going to look at this. Let's say I'm looking at my district, campus, and teacher percents, and I'd probably make a little table. And let's say, I don't know, my district is at 48%. My campus is at 46%. Let's say me as a teacher, I'm at 56%. That's good. This is a good question. Great job. That's where we want to be. We want to be above 50%. But I'd like to be a little bit higher than 56 if at all possible. So I'm going to look at this question. I know that the answer is negative 60. This is a slope question. What I'm going to do is look at my data and see what the most common wrong answer was. When kids got it wrong, what did they put in the most? So a lot of times on these questions, the most common wrong answer is going to be the positive answer. So the slope here was negative 60. a lot of times the most common wrong answer is going to be positive 60. If that is the case, then I need to make sure that my students know where to put that negative. Did they use slope formula to figure it out? Did they look at the movement in the table? Whatever they did, I need to make sure that they recognize in a table when the slope is negative. And so that gives me that note. So I will probably make a note to the side. Work on negative slope from a table. And that way next year I know, or even in my upcoming lessons, I know this is a place I need to look at. Because when it's not multiple choice, they're making that error. Let's look at a multiple choice question. So here, the question asks which one of these graphs are proportional. And this is make-believe data. So let's say I looked at this answer choice and I have my numbers here. So district district campus and teacher. I'm right in line with my campus, but my percent is too low. So I'm going to look at these over here. Let's say 30% chose the correct answer, which was B. 24% chose A. 23% chose C. And 23% chose D. So what that says to me right here, anything close to 25% means they were guessing. Especially when you're 25% on all of your answer choices. That means they were guessing. So what I see is when I look at this question, everyone was guessing. They did not know which graph was proportional. So I need to go back over this topic with everyone. This would be a whole group reteach because nobody knows what it is. It's possible that the 30% that got it just guessed correctly. Let's see. Maybe I have something like this classic question. And if you have ever given an 8th grade or 9th grade math test, you've seen something similar to this lovely question where basically they're finding the slope and the answer choices are written in this lovely slope formula, A being the correct answer choice. So let's say I'm looking at this question and it's about 52% A, 22% B, 13% C, and 13% D. So what that tells me is while the majority knew it was A lot of kids wanted to choose B. If I could get that 22% to choose A, I would be up at a possible 74% correct, which would be very close to my goal of 75. So that being the case, I'm going to look at answer choice B and see what the error was. So what the error happens to be is these numerators here, they've switched them out. So what they haven't noticed is that when you put something in slope formula, these two numbers came from the same point, and these two numbers should have come from the same point, right? And that would have been happening here. So they're not putting the points in the correct spot in the formula. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all the kids that chose B, and I'm going to put them in a small group, and I'm going to reteach, and when I reteach, I'm going to reteach slope formula, specifically using slope formula. I might even specifically use this equal sign format a couple of times as well in that small group reteach so that they see it. This is not everybody. This is a small group of people. If I fix it with that 22%, I've hit my goal. So that's something I would definitely look at. You know, maybe you go to another question. You get here, you're like, oh, this question was 85% correct. You may go, that's really great. I'm so happy with that. Let's go back to that lesson. Let's see how we taught it. Let's make sure we make a note and keep this lesson. So whatever lesson we did to teach this, we're going to keep this lesson. If we put it in warm-ups every single day, then we're keeping those warm-ups for next year, and we're doing them every single day. So those are just some of the things that I look at when I'm going over tests and I'm going over data. I always also want to take a minute and match the question to the TEK. So for instance, I would want to look at this TEK. So the TEK here is 8, 5F. I noticed that they're asking me to find a non-proportional relationship from a table. So what I want to do is I want to go ahead and check that TEK. I want to make sure that that TEK actually says we should find something proportional or non-proportional from a table. So that's 8, 5F. So I'm going to go to my TEKs, and I'm going to look for 8, 5F, which is right here. It says distinguish between proportional and non-proportional situations using tables. So this is a legitimate question, and I can look at the data from that. Occasionally you'll find that that doesn't happen, and then you know why that question may or may not have performed well. So that's an overall general view of how I look at data and how I make adjustments to my lessons or small group or whole group reteach going forward.